Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life. That's Eddie Reece. My name is Billy Courtright, and we come to you each and every week to talk to you about psychotherapy and its effects on the population. This guy, Eddie, has interesting perspective, and I serve as the voice of the every person, getting to ask the questions that we can ponder and explain for your benefit. And today, we are talking about silencing the inner critic. Why is it, Eddie, that the majority of the conversations that we have within our own minds are negative? What is it meant to hear Psychology Today talk about overcoming toxic self-criticism? What is your perspective about that question? Those questions in those terms?
Yeah, I wouldn't frame it at all as silencing the inner critic. Actually, you want to turn the volume up a bit. What you want to add to it is compassionate listener. And for the folks that listened or watched some of our podcasts, they know all about the kindness dialogue where you learn to talk to yourself differently. The critical voice that people call critical, I just call it mean. The people the person who mistreats us the most is ourselves. After you've been away from your parents for a while, you're living on your own, you wind up abusing yourself more than they ever did because you live with yourself 24/7. And I guess where we can start is that most people don't even know they're being mean to themselves. And to call it abusive sounds way over the top, but it is. And so we can start with how it is we talk to ourselves, but we don't even know we're talking to ourselves. And how is it that we're being mean to ourselves and we don't know we're being mean?
I think that's a great place to start. Kind of how, where do these thoughts germinate from? Where do they start? And then how does the back and forth within our own mind progress? And then why is it that inevitably there's so much judgment?
Because that's how we were trained. If you train a dog to bite people, it's going to bite people. If you're trained, your upbringing trains you to be very harsh in your judgments of yourself. That's what you're going to do. And you don't see it as that because that's normal. Right? That's the way it's been. I have clients, when I talk to them about this, I go, gosh, you're just brutal to yourself. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, you're telling yourself that you suck, Well, I mean, coming to this situation, I do. I can't pull this off at all, I just feel really stupid. And I go, okay, I feel really stupid. You're actually not saying I feel really stupid. Remember, we're made up of parts. So there's a part of you who's speaking. That part, who's it speaking to? It's not in a vacuum. So it's not really saying I feel really stupid. It's saying you're really stupid, or you're making me feel stupid. It's accusing another part for causing the problem that the speaking part has. So I feel bad because you screw up. You don't get things done. You're not good enough. Most of us would admit that, yeah, at least at times, I just don't feel like I'm good enough. I don't feel like I'm good enough, so I try to get better. The reason you don't feel good enough is because you're telling yourself that constantly. And so the trick is to begin to listen to it. And you listen to it by changing the verbiage of, I'm such an idiot, to you're such an idiot. That's what's really being said. One part's talking to another part all the time, or other parts all the time. If you have a thought, it's at least half of a conversation.
Right.
Maybe a third, maybe a fourth. Whatever you think. Even if you walk outside and go, wow, the weather is awesome. Who'd you say that to? Well, I said it to myself. No, you're not a self. You are self. So you said it to the selves So get the conversation going. Oh, wow, the weather's really nice. Yeah, it really is. God, I love it that it's cooled off a bit. No kidding. It's a conversation. Go ahead and have the conversation. Get used to talking to yourself that way rather than the way most of us do in a monologue that's a rant about how awful we are.
Yeah. No, and again, we talk about where these thoughts emanate from, like what starts them. It sounded like, we talk about the weather. It's an observation, and that very well might be the case.
Mm-hmm.
But something happens, and this is where my curiosity went. Like, what in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, like, what happens to where that observation turns critical, or the critique or the recognition of a less than desired outcome becomes judgment, and then you end up scolding yourself to some degree, and that just feels rotten.
Yeah, it does. At the same time, we obviously believe that's the thing to do, to the point where we don't even question whether it's the thing to do or not. We just do it. I screwed that up. You're saying, well, you screwed that up. Right? And you want to get a dialogue going so that you're in that active listening kindness dialogue. So, wow, you screwed that up, and to reflect that back. So I screwed that up. Oh yeah. I mean, he had that interview, and I mean, you thought you were prepared, but obviously you weren't, because you couldn't even answer the questions. And I mean, what's wrong with you? So I couldn't answer the questions. I thought I was prepared, but I wasn't. And you're asking what's wrong with me. Yeah, because, geez, I mean, they're probably like rolling their eyes when you walked out, And you keep going. Where you're always going to get to in these conversations is the part who's speaking has got some kind of fear driving them. If it would get to the understanding statement of, oh, I get it, you're mad at me for screwing up the interview, which means I'm not going to get the job. And this was the best opportunity I had to get a really good job and what we really are shooting for. And now that they know what a screw up I am, there's no reason for me to even take another interview in this field, because they're already on the phone. I mean, you'll hear that part say these things, and you're not going to get a job. And if you keep going, you're not going to get this job. You're going to wind up in some sort of, miserable job that you hate. We're going to be miserable for the rest of our lives. We're never going to be happy. Nobody's going to want anything to do with us, because they'll see that we can't achieve this level of success. We're just going to achieve this kind of life, and who's going to want to hang out with anybody like that? And then nobody's going to want you. You're going to live alone for the rest of your life, and then you're going to die under a bridge, apparently, because you'll probably run out of money, because you're not going to make enough money to afford anything. And then once you're dead on the streets, the other homeless people will step over your dead, lifeless body, because they don't care about you, because they know what a loser you are. And then the coroner will show up to pick up another dead homeless person, and they'll see that it's you, and they'll go, oh, it's that guy, and they're just going to drive off and leave you, because you're not even worth their time. And the buzzards are going to come to eat you, and they're going to start to sniff around and go, oh, it's that guy. They're not even going to eat you, because you're so worthless. And anybody I've ever done this with, that's where they wind up. It's
That's
version of that.
That's some pretty powerfully negative stuff.
Yeah.
And it's painful to hear.
It is. It's really awful. And I walk people down that path by going, and then what? Well, I won't be able to get that job. And then what? And then what? And then what? It's some version of this horrible existence, right, that ends horribly. And I go, that's what I mean by you being brutal to yourself. Because each time you go after yourself, that's what you're saying. This is where we're going to wind up, because you messed this up. You didn't do that right. You didn't say the right thing. You didn't say anything at all. the hundreds of times a day we will say to ourselves something along the lines of, that's probably what's going on.
Clearly, well, maybe not clearly, but my hope is that there's a better way, a way where we can perhaps be a little kinder to ourselves, or recognize perhaps when we're treading close to that slippery slope, because clearly this is an issue, and I can only imagine if those were the thoughts that I had going through my head all day, every day, that is depressing.
Well, I would venture to say that, though, that's at least the majority of thoughts that go through your head every day. That's just how we are, and we don't even notice it. I mean, small little things. You drop something and break it, and you're like, oh God, that's some part of you reacting to the part of you who dropped it, right? And going, how can you be so stupid? I mean, just that all by itself is brutal enough. I mean, it's an accident, and so what? You dropped something and it broke. I mean, all right, we'll clean it up. Rather than, oh darn, there's no tone of you're an idiot. Like, ooh, we dropped this. Oh, it broke. Oh, crap. All right, let's get this cleaned up. I mean, you're not losing it, and then you're not cleaning it up, hearing some version of God. That goes on all the time, and that's what I mean by brutal. And so the first step is to begin to really listen. If you really listen to your thoughts, you'll hear the meanness in it. If you just switch it over to you instead of me, you. Who are you talking to? Address them, and you'll hear what you think about them, and you're not very happy with them. And if you can get a picture of living in this world, you'll begin to see why whatever plagues you is because this is the world you live in. You live in this constant state of being abused, being beaten up. And so you have to make sure everything goes just right. You have to try to control everything so that this voice is not going to come after you. If I'm working with a golfer, from a sports enhancement performance sort of perspective, I go, you ever get, mad at yourself for missing a putt or a shot? Oh yeah, all the time. And I go, what are the kind of things you say? And it's these sorts of things. It's like, oh, how can I be so stupid? You're saying, how can you be so stupid? And it's a part of you who didn't swing the club. He's never hit a golf shot in his life. He's talking to the guy who hit the shot. How can you be so stupid? You're so stupid. You know how to do that and you didn't do it. That's what we're afraid of when we're over a shot or over a putt. We're not worried about, I miss this putt. We're worried about, I'm going to hear this guy come after me. That's what pressure is. Pressure is, I don't want to hear that. Because if you never heard him, if you missed the shot and you laughed because that's pretty funny, you wouldn't have any fear. You wouldn't be afraid. You drop something and break it, and they're like, oh man, that's too bad. Now we got to clean this up. Yeah, darn. That was terrible. I hated dropping that. Yeah, boy, whew, what a mess. Yeah, it really is. Nobody's mad. Nobody's, people are a little upset that you broke it, and now you've got to spend this extra time, and you wish you hadn't broken it. Now you go get another one or whatever. But nobody's mad about it.
But in the putt example, when you have this incredible desire for a certain outcome, and you get yourself in a position to appreciate that opportunity, and you're thinking, oh boy, this would be great. Yeah. And sometimes it is, and other times it doesn't work out.
It's not. Yeah. And there, for those of you who follow golf, there's a golfer named Tommy Fleetwood that throughout the playoffs here that recently happened, the guy had a chance to win a number of times and didn't. and he kept coming back, and he kept getting in the same position. He would be 3 shots up with 3 holes to play and lose, and and then he wound up winning the championship, which is a $10 million prize, which is nice. And but all of this is to say, there was a poll. What was your favorite moment in golf this season? And one of the moments was Roy McIlroy winning the career Grand Slam, which means you've won the 4 majors in your life, which is huge. There's only like 6 people maybe that have done that. He was the person to do it. That was 27% picked that as their moment. 57% picked Tommy Fleetwood winning. What that tells me is exactly what we're talking about. People were relating to him and pulling for him because they know what it's like to think of yourself as a loser and then overcome it. And then believe that you're actually not a loser anymore until the next time you lose, and now you're going to beat yourself up again. It's never enough. It's never enough. But that's why people pick that as their favorite moment, because it was very relatable.
Makes for a better story too. If there's
it
nothing
does.
to overcome, I mean, it's kind of a lot of people didn't like Tiger Woods because all he did was win.
There's a lot of truth to that, he's just gonna win again, but there was a lot of people that liked him because of that,
Whether or not I could relate to it is a totally different conversation.
No, and so we're projecting on these people, on teams, in sports, in a movie, pulling for the underdog. We're all doing that because we want to vicariously have this feeling of overcoming, what is called that critical voice. And you don't ever want to overcome it. You want to befriend it and really hear what's going on. What world is he living in that he's that terrified all the time, and then believes that screaming at you and berating you is going to help? Because that's why he's doing it. He wants to help you himself be a better person, and he thinks that's going to motivate you, but it does just the opposite. So what kind of world does he live in? I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking world to live in, where you can't screw up at all, or you're going to wind up not even being eaten by the vultures. That's a tough world.
No question. An all too familiar world, really. I mean, you think about it. There's a saying or quote I've seen, or a meme or whatever. It says pressure is a privilege. And it talks about the fact that if you're feeling pressure, it's because you're doing something important or it matters to you.
And it does. And at the same time, for the most part, a lot of us feel the pressure because we're afraid of hearing that voice.
Oh yeah.
And I
fear of failure.
Yeah. And it's and a fear of failure is a fear of being berated by ourselves, not that anybody else is going to berate us.
Well, we're the first.
We're the first and the last, and the one that keeps doing it long after everybody else has forgotten what we've done.
Right.
And they don't care anyway. So that's kind of the theme of today's conversation, is to really pay attention to how you treat yourself, how you think about yourself, the world that part of you lives in, and to go through this kindness dialogue, that we've talked about so many times, so that you can befriend that part of you and eventually not be afraid of each other. Because you're really afraid of each other. We're afraid of hearing the voice, and the critical voice, as people call it, is afraid of you messing up again, because he knows where that leads. And it's so common that we honestly don't even know we're doing it.
Yeah.
And even when I point it out to clients, sometimes it takes them a while to catch on that they really are being mean.
Yeah, no question. How much of the actual realized outcome was influenced or in some way dependent upon that inner dialogue?
Is your question how much of your performance is connected, tied to that inner dialogue?
I mean, it stands to
Well,
reason. I mean, if there's
a
something,
lot. I mean, if you're coming down the stretch of something you want to achieve, I'll use myself. I really want these podcasts to reach a good number of people. That number changes from time to time as I learn the reality of putting out yet another podcast, and the pool you have to swim through to get to the surface, so to speak. When you're coming down the stretch of that, you want to succeed, and being really emotionally healthy is being able to tell how much of that desire comes from your passion for what you do. I have a tremendous passion for what I do, and how much of it is coming from being terrified of that voice going after you if you don't achieve whatever is determined to be success.
yeah, and to plus that, I'm thinking like what could possibly be the likelihood of success. You can't get the vision or the image of failure out of your head in that moment. Like I just don't know. Like
Oh, yeah. Well, if a lot of your motivation is coming from fear, chances are your chance of success isn't as high as it would be if your motivation is coming from your passion for what you do. The real, and this shows up so easily in sports, but the real champions have this incredible passion for what they do. They're not doing it so much for the money. They're doing it because this is what they do. This is what they love. And when they get in those pressure situations, that's what they thrive on. If you're really a champion, most of us would be terrified to get the ball and with 2 seconds left on the clock, and we need a point. I mean, most of us are going to freak out. Whereas somebody who's really a champion wants the ball, right? Because that's how they can fulfill their passion. And if they come through and get the winning point, they're thrilled. If they don't, they're heartbroken. But my picture of it is that they're not going to berate themselves. That the real champions, in my book, are people who would be called gracious losers. You shake your opponent's hand and you go, "Good game. You did great." So that's what we're shooting for. We're shooting to fail and be able to feel disappointment, heartache. God, I really wanted to pull that off without any meanness. To have the conversation of, "Oh man, I really wanted to pull that off." Yeah, we all did, and gosh, just came down to the wire, didn't it? Yeah, and that was some experience too, man. I mean, we were putting it all out there. Yeah, we did. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of being able to get in that position, to where it was that close, yeah, that was awesome. And whew, that's going to sting for a long time. Yeah, probably forever. Yeah, probably will. Nobody's mad. Nobody's upset. Nobody's going, "Now we're going to die alone under a bridge." We suck. What a different world we would all live in if we could all do that and do that with each other. Okay. If you have things you desire from other people and they don't come through for you, to not berate them for it. I mean, that's where most relationship problems come from, is you're not behaving the way I dictate you should behave. That's what people are mad about. Because if you don't behave the way I want you to behave, then that means I'm the loser for picking you. And then there you go, right to the bridge. Because who would pick a loser like that except for another loser?
it was essentially, he brought up the case He's a sports psychologist, is what he did for a living, and worked with some. He worked at ING Academy and worked with some pretty amazing athletes, and worked with U.S. Soccer, and worked with Alabama football, and he worked with Georgia and the Patriots. And he's obviously, this guy's pretty amazing. But he talks about in his book this. He had read a quote from Bill Buckner a year or more before the infamous ball through the leg error in the mid 80s. Obviously the year Boston did not go. And it was interesting that in this article, they had asked Bill Buckner, like the author had asked, like, what scares you the most? And he's like, oh, well, the most frightening thing that could ever happen to an athlete is to be in a position to go to or win the World Series and make the error that cost your team the win, to have a, whatever. I don't know if he specifically said a ball goes through your legs, but but it was weird. And in this book, they talk about, like, he said this, and literally, like, within a year and a half, it actually happened.
Right.
And they were drawing a correlation between what this author describes as saying stupid stuff out loud and being critical of oneself or that sort of thing. That was his quote. You can comment on it, and then it actually occurring. And I can't for the life of me think of the book, the author, or the circumstance. But as you're talking about this, I'm still reminded of that idea of how powerful that level of self-critique or fear, or however you want to describe it, can be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this brings up a whole nother topic of
Trevor Moawad, by the way. I just remember the author.
Oh, okay. Good for you. I haven't heard that story, but what it demonstrates to me is what I know we've mentioned this in a podcast of what people call self-sabotage. And if Buckner is saying the biggest fear I have, which is what he's saying, is blowing it when we've got a chance to win, then what he's telling you is he's coming from a place of fear in his playing. And whatever fears we don't examine are going to show up in our lives. And we tend to think of it as sabotage. I want to be successful, and then I go screw something up in such a way there's no way I can be successful. We think, well, wow, what's wrong with this guy? Well, nothing's wrong. What it is that our fears need to be heard and listened to and seen and befriended, so that they don't have to live in that horrifying world 24 hours a day. Just what we've been talking about today. And if you don't do that, they're going to make themselves known in some sort of way that you can't ignore. And I would say that's what happened to Buckner, is that he just lived with that fear, and then it showed up in the very way. I tell couples when they come in and they go, oh, this person hurt me this way, I go, well, that's because you needed to be hurt that way. And most of the time they feel pretty offended. And I say, because that part of you who feels that particular kind of hurt has felt that hurt before, long before you knew this other person existed. And you didn't deal with it face to face and head on. You developed this world where you were never going to let that happen. And so that's exactly what happened, because that part of you is helping to control your life and the choices you make so that you will wind up in that very hurtful place. So if your caretakers, your upbringing was one of being emotionally neglected, you're not going to be able to voice that as a child. Gee, mom and dad, you're emotionally neglecting me. And in order for me to develop as a healthy human being, I need my emotions to be addressed and taken care of in a kind, compassionate way. You're going to think it's something else, and you're going to think it's because of you. And that's where this world begins to develop that we've talked about today. If I were smarter, better looking, funnier, taller, shorter, whatever you come up with to beat yourself up, then they wouldn't neglect me. You're going to see it as your fault. And so the part of you who is neglected and carries that hurt is going to work continuously to find a way for us to feel emotionally neglected. And if you haven't figured it out by the time you get married, you're going to marry somebody who will emotionally neglect you. You have to. There's the only way it's going to work, so that you can feel that hurt again, which means that part of you says, I'm here. I've been here all along. You need to pay attention to me. You need me to grieve the loss of what I never had in order for me to heal and in order for me to be able to live out in the open and for you not to be so afraid of me. And that's a lot of therapy, because it's your whole life was geared toward never knowing this part, never even believing it existed, because folks like that will go, I'm so emotionally available, and they're not. And I go, no, you're not. If you were truly emotionally available and emotionally healthy, you wouldn't have no interest in somebody who wasn't. Your interest, though, was in somebody who's not, which says that's who you are also. And so you're going to have to change your entire belief system about who you've actually been your whole life, and then grieve that loss that you never were that person you thought you were. You were this other person, and you lost all these years of being emotionally healthy and connected to people in a deep emotional way, which is this whole thing we've also mentioned in other podcasts of the true desire that I think we all have is to be seen, heard, felt, known, which means in this emotional realm of emotional neglection, I need my emotions to be able to be expressed and for people to see them, hear them, accept them, not shame them. Right. Of course you're sad. Of course you're hurting. Of course you're mad. And go ahead and be that way. I'll be here as long as you need it. And to make that your world, so you're not so afraid.
The fear of insignificance is real. It's a real.
Oh yeah, I mean it's people who are talk about being afraid of dying. What they're afraid of, I think, is not existing, which is the way parts of them already feel that I don't exist and I don't know how to exist and I don't want to die never having existed. So I have to make a name for myself somehow, and then people will know me, and then I'll be okay. The Counting Crows sing a line, something about, then everybody will know me and I'll never be lonely again,
Yeah. That's true.
No, it's not how it works.
I won't ever be lonely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's great. I can't sing, but I know the song.
Jones.
That's right.
That's such a great song.
Great album. It was a great time in my life. Those were the mid 90s for those that don't remember.
You're such a child.
I am a child. I am a child at heart as well. This is a fascinating line of conversation. There's a lot that we've touched on. There's certainly some familiarity, and if you're listening to these in succession or on any type of regular basis, you're definitely catching some themes, some consistencies within Eddie and our conversations. One thing, having been a part of each and every one of these conversations and recordings throughout the years, as I can tell you, is one thing Eddie is above all else is very consistent. He has a perspective which I find refreshing, and it reminds me that it reminds me of a saying I think we likely have all heard, but it goes something like, you believe in something or you fall for anything. And Eddie has a real perspective on psychotherapy and mental health, and it's having had the conversations with him over and over again, it's starting to make sense. And that witness, that empathetic witness, that kindness, that curiosity, that compassion, that space, is certainly coming up over and over and over again. And in a lot of these episodes, as it should, because if you were bouncing all over the place, I think folks might question the credibility of your perspective, which no one can do, in my opinion. Yeah. So, it's been an interesting conversation today. We talked about, why why are we so hard on ourselves? And why is the majority of self-talk negative? And what are the effects of all that that negative self-talk? And, what are the outcomes of that constant critique and that lack of grace? And not having the opportunity to explore and fail and get up and learn and do it again,
Yeah.
because to me, that's a crime. I mean, just what we're doing right now. I mean, we often listen to episodes from a bygone era of, a year or two ago, and we weren't the same podcasters that we are today. We're same men, but we weren't the same podcasters. You just, the path is made by walking, and a lot of that experience just kind of molds us into the future versions of ourselves. But I don't think I could live constantly condemning that progress. I'm sure I am judgmental, and I'm sure I'm self-critical, and I know I've had some negative self-talk. But I'm a generally hopeful human, and I think a lot of it has to do with our regular conversations, because I think anyone who knows you knows what, in my opinion, what you want more than anything is for people to be kind, not to each other, but you can't be kind to anyone until you're kind to yourself first. So
you've got to learn how to do it. And the easiest way to learn how is with yourself, since you're with yourself all the time. And you have a few thousand opportunities a day when you're living in this world where you are mean to yourself. You do it so many times, you have a lot of opportunities. So learn to be that way with yourself. And then it's a little bit easier with other people since you know the skills. I got kind of stuck on the first thing you said about what was it? If you don't believe in something.
Without that belief system, we can perhaps fall victim to something or fall for something.
Yeah, because that reminded me of another song. Steve Goodman, one of my favorite songwriters, wrote a song called Turnpike Tom, and it's a story that he winds up in the line near the end of the song saying, "You only fall for lies and stories when you really want to." And that fear causes us to really want to. If I've got a chance here to get in on the ground floor, I don't want to miss this opportunity. You're going to make a mistake in your choices because of your fear, because that part that believes if I can grab the golden ring, then it will be enough, is going to override any logic that you may have about thing you're looking at that to most people would obviously not be a good idea. And so you fall for those things. And that's just one of the countless ways that this way of treating yourself that we've talked about today shows up. I mean, it shows up anywhere you're having a difficult time in your life. You can trace it right back to this. I guarantee you that it will have something to do with something you're afraid of, that you are being mean to yourself so that you won't be afraid. And that never works.
Yeah. Doesn't make a lot of sense either.
Well, it will if you're living that way. It will make all the sense in the world. If I tell myself how stupid I am, I'll get smarter so that I won't tell myself how stupid I am. Problem is, there's no degree of smartness that will ever quiet that voice. And that's the sad part of it, is it's never enough. It's just never enough. I think we did a podcast on that.
We did, but we've finished up many podcasts with the understanding that it's a good reason to get some therapy.
Well, pretty much everything's in my world is a good reason to get therapy.
Yeah, and as we always say, if somebody listened or watched this episode and found themselves contemplating the conversations that they're having with themselves, and they've realized, you know what, how might this turn into something of benefit? How might I process this in a professional or healthy way? Yeah. And I'm going to reach out, and I'm going to try to find someone who's had a lot of therapy and is practicing. And I have a decent chance of making some progress with my own self-talk, because if they're working with you, Eddie, they're going to learn the kindness dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're going to hear about it early on.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Wednesday Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life with Eddie Reece and Billy Courtright. We come to you each and every Wednesday on YouTube and wherever you consume audio podcasts. Soon to be launching Patreon, Medium, and Substack blog as well. So stay tuned for that, and we'll keep coming back because we love it.
Yeah.
Any final words, pal?
No, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity as always. It's my idea of a good time. So
That's right. All right, folks. See you next week.
Alrighty, bye.